Welcome to episode 34.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
It's a new year, and if you're like me, you are already thinking about warmer weather and taking that getaway to that tropical or exotic destination. Maybe you plan to travel to Walt Disney World or Universal Studios. No matter what kind of trip you plan, 3D Travel Company is the company for you. Just visit 3dtravelcompany.com and let them know that Trenton sent you from Who Did That Voice. Or you can book on www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips booked and traveled by the end of 2017. Book today and travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest hails all the way from the UK. He is an award-winning British voiceover artist who does 20 different accents and over hundreds of different character voices. Speaking of, one of the characters he plays is none other than Talking Tom the Cat.
Welcome to Talking Tom's Brain Farts on your favorite YouTube channel. I hope it's your favorite. If it's not, please, give me a chance. Please!
This special guest has also used his voice for commercials for companies such as Amazon.
It's your friend's birthday. How do you find the perfect gift? Download the Amazon app and let it find you. Just seen your mum reading that book your friend's been talking about. Scan the barcode, buy with one click, and you'll get regular delivery updates. The Amazon app. What are you looking for?
If your kids listen to those read-along stories, they may have heard our special guest as Jarvis on Marvel's The Avengers Iron Man Mark 7, the read-along story.
Are you sure you're ready for your first flight, Mr. Stark?
We won't find out unless we try, Jarvis.
Woohoo! This is great.
Sir, there is a potentially fatal buildup of ice occurring.
To be continued in Marvel's The Avengers, only in theaters.
Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice? Today on the show we have Jay Britton joining us all the way from England.
Hello.
So Jay, the very first thing we always like to do is get to know who we're speaking with today on the show. So if you would just share a little bit about who you are and how did you get into voice acting, Jay?
Oh, okay. So I'm me. I'm Jay Britton. I'm 31. I live in, as you said, England. I live in the countryside. So I've got a studio at the bottom of my garden. And prior to voiceover, I actually had a 12-year, 13-year career in IT. I always wanted to do voices. I always wanted to be a voice actor. But probably like most of us, when I got to kind of college age, I thought I should probably go and get a proper job. Which I now immediately regret. So I actually went off and did IT for 12 or so years. I'd always performed throughout my life, be it theater or being in a band. Everyone has to be in a band at some point. I did a lot of singing and musical theater as well. But it wasn't until a little over kind of 6 years now where I was just sat in my office one day and went, right, I've had enough of IT. I want to go and actually pursue my passion. So I went off and I attended a sort of 1-hour masterclass thing in London, and I came out of that with some just god awful demo spots, and started trying to make a go of it. And then I kind of played around for about 4 years, and it's about 2 years ago was when I got kind of dead serious about voiceover and got the booth at home and started building up agents and client portfolios and all that kind of lovely stuff, and then eventually ditched the IT job and kind of now here I am.
Well, that's fantastic, Jay, man. And what was your driving passion behind wanting to do voiceover? Like, what was your reasoning behind that?
I guess kind of twofold, really. The first was just, and I hate to call them silly voices because they're not really. They're so much more than that. But I was the guy at school who was, I did all the voices and I was the crazy character. And just because it's just me, it's who I am at my core. Whether I was a voice actor or not, I would still be wandering around my house, breaking into song at any moment and just talking to myself in various different voices. I remember I have a very vivid memory of being like a 12-year-old kid walking down the stairs having an argument between a German scientist and his henchman about the the state that the henchman had left the laboratory in. So I think it's kind of just that's who I am at my core. Is I am the voices guy. And then this kind of second part of it was, we all reach a certain age, and for me it was when I got to the end of my 20s, and I had what I thought I should have in order to feel successful. I had my wife, I had my son, I had a very nice house and a nice car on the drive, but I was just miserable. And it was that kind of point where I went, right, I'm nearly 30. If I'm going to make a change, let's make a change. And a big driver was not wanting to get to 50 and 60 years old and look back and have regret of doing a career for my life that I didn't absolutely love. So that became a driving force. And my son as well. I wanted to set him the example of don't go for the money, don't go for the secured job, just go for whatever brings love and passion into your life and do that. So he kind of was a big part of that switch in mindset as well.
Well, that's really wonderful to hear, Jay, because it's really important to know that what you're doing is what you love, because when you love it, it isn't work.
Yeah, I don't ever. I mean, I see so many people on Twitter who, they like the hashtag, like Monday morning, and it's like Monday morning is my favorite time. I love Monday morning because it means I get to come back down to my studio. It's a whole new week of opportunity, and I genuinely I hate Friday afternoon when everything starts closing down for the weekend, and I love Monday morning because it means it's a whole new week of doing what I love. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not work when it's something that you love.
Well, that is definitely amazing, brother. It's good to hear that, and you can definitely tell the excitement in your voice that it truly is the passion and love for you. Well, Jay, I know with your involvement in voiceover, you actually got to be involved with Ford Mustang commercial. I believe it was a national commercial for the United States. How did that all come about?
A single tweet, believe it or not. That was the craziest thing I've ever done in my entire life. There was a tweet that went out from a casting director in the UK who was looking for people who had dreams. I was like, well, all right, yeah, I kind of got a dream. Let's see where this goes. So I just tweeted back going, I'm a voice actor trying to make a new career in voiceover, and my dream is of this, and this. And I got invited along to a casting in London, and they just sort of asked loads of questions about America and, my dreams and what I wanted and my favorite kinds of car and all this sort of stuff. And then the weeks went by, and then I just got an email from the casting director going, and all it said, and it was brilliant. It was like a spy mystery. All it said was, "Have a passport?" ? And I was like, okay, yes, I've got a passport. Does this mean what I think it means? And then kind of over the couple of weeks after that, it all transpired that I'd booked it, and I was off to San Francisco to film this Ford Mustang documentary. It was really, there was 12 of us, and they kind of each did a little documentary about us and our dreams, and it involved chefs cooking us omelets on the sidewalk, closed down streets in like downtown San Francisco, and driving through in these Ford Mustangs. Like at the time they were the prototype Ford Mustangs with a police escort. I mean, it was just insane.
Wow.
It was absolutely insane. And at one point when I'm driving, each one of us had a little surprise dropped on us. So like there was a comedian, and they dropped a surprise on him. They'd booked him a spot at a comedy club for the night. There was a guy who wanted to be a chef, and they dropped him right in the middle of a restaurant to cook for the evening. And for me, they went, right, we're going to take you to Tippett Studios, and you're going to audition for their new project. Wow. So yeah, I just about managed to keep the car on the road. So we went off and we did that audition, and then it was basically cut and turned into this commercial for Ford Mustang, all about, get yourself a Mustang moment. And it was, a commercial that went out in the States, but there is like a 3-minute documentary of like my experience of that, online on YouTube, and you can watch all the other guys and their experiences as well. And they're really, really interesting things.
Well, that is most fantastic, man. It's way more involved and in depth than I had realized. And that's a fantastic story, brother. Wow.
Absolutely great. And it was a really good, because I was kind of, this was August, I think, 2014. And it was only the beginning of 2014 that I'd really pushed myself to go into voiceover, hell for leather. And what was really interesting was all 12 of us. So I met 6 of the 12 was when I was there, and each of us had our own individual dream. And what was really amazing was when anybody has a dream, and we all kind of noticed it about each other, is that we all had the things that we needed to kind of make our dreams become a reality. All we needed was that kind of kick to actually go and do it. And this, you know, filming this Ford Mustang thing was exactly that kick, and it was really inspiring just to meet these people with dreams. And I remember now every audition I walk into in the UK now, if it's like a big audition and I'm starting to feel the pressure, is I just remember that I quite happily flew to San Francisco, got thrown in a top level studio, doing an audition whilst being filmed for a documentary. I was like, if I can take that, then that's fine. This audition is nothing. I can cope. So it was just one of those like seminal moments in life where everything came together. Yeah, mind blowing, as you can tell, because I'm rambling on about it.
No, man, that's fantastic. You know, you can really tell that it really impacted your life, and it kind of feels like it was kind of a Kickstarter of sorts for you to kind of get that push, like you said you needed. And what better way to do it than in a Ford Mustang?
Well, yeah, they didn't let me keep one. That's the only thing I was annoyed.
Darn.
I know. Yeah.
Hey, they're gonna send it back overseas with you next time. No.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I know, dude, that was amazing, by the way. Thanks so much for sharing that. And it was way more in depth than I had realized, like I mentioned before, but that's a fantastic story. I know you actually have been involved with Talking Tom, which some people are probably very familiar with. How did that project come about where you kind of voiced Talking Tom? And I know you've also done some motion capture as well, and I believe that kind of plays into it as well, I believe.
That was an interesting one, and it's funnily enough, it's now one of the lessons because now I coach guys getting into voiceover, and it's one of the things I coach about is that sometimes the value of a job is more than the money they're going to pay you. So Talking Tom actually appeared on a casting website in the UK for an okay rate. It wasn't particularly amazing. I thought, it's animation. And I looked into Talking Tom and kind of what it was all about, and I spotted kind of movie deals being talked about in TV series. So I was like, well, I'll give this I've been drinking, it's late. I'll give this a shot. So I auditioned and booked it, and then kind of within, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of starting, like you say, just as voice for animations that already existed, the production team went, you don't also do facial capture, do you? And I was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I can do facial capture. So we then started filming over webcam. I would do the voice and the face in my voiceover booth at home, and that would animate Tom. And then a couple of weeks after that, they went, you don't happen to do full body motion capture as well, do you? And I said, yeah, yes, I can. And then all of a sudden, I think maybe 2 weeks after that, I was flying out to Slovenia to the offices of the company who make Talking Tom, and they'd built out a motion capture studio, and I was doing full-bodied full performance capture. So that's, I wear a suit capturing my body, a microphone capturing my voice, and a webcam, or a more advanced webcam strapped to my face that captures my facial animations, and then that all gets pumped into driving Talking Tom, the beloved Talking Tom.
Wow, that is so interesting. I had not really heard anything about motion capture from somebody personally. I've seen different documentaries and stuff. What are all the different dots? Because I know they put different like markers or something on the face and around the body, of course, as well. But especially it seems as it's gotten more and more of an expertise, I guess, for the people that are doing it. There seems to be more and more things they add to the actors' bodies now.
Yeah, and I think it's... The thing is with motion capture is there's a lot of different technologies as well. There isn't a single standard way of doing motion capture. So the ones you see with the dots, that's where you have cameras with infrared, and they're just picking up where the light bounces off the dots on your suit. Okay. The Talking Tom stuff is actually I don't know exactly what technology they use, but it's not camera based. It's how can I describe it? So you still wear a suit, and do you have Tic Tacs in the States? The little box full of mints. So there's sort of those size boxes attached to the suit, like on your arms, your legs, your chest, and they actually they detect the movement, and they send the data back to the computer. So rather than a camera watching you, you're actually wearing sensors that detect the movement and send it back. So that's another kind of way of doing it. And you're right. As the technology evolves, more and more stuff happens in terms of being able to facial capture, whether that's a head-mounted camera where you literally strap the camera to your face, which, by the way, for anybody thinking, yeah, motion capture looks really cool, once you've worn a head camera for about 30 seconds, you immediately want to rip it off your head. They are the most uncomfortable things in the entire planet.
Wow.
then imagine them wearing them for like 6 hours. They're not much fun. Or you can do marker-based facial capture where they just draw dots on your face and they pick that up from a camera. So there's lots and lots of different ways of doing it. And you've got, the very, very high end, which is that full performance capture where it's body, voice, and face all done in real time in one go. And then you've got kind of the piecemeal way of doing it where you might get one actor to drive the body and then another actor comes in and does the voice. And you could get someone just sat on a chair to do the face animation. So there is loads of different ways you can slice the technology up to get different results depending on time and budget and all that kind of lovely stuff.
Absolutely, Jay. Well, thank you so much for kind of diving into some of the different aspects and giving us a better understanding of what it actually is. So thank you very much for that.
I love it. I'm a bit obsessed with motion capture because it's really interesting from a voice actor's perspective because all of a sudden you're given something extra to do a performance with because obviously I'm used to it just being my voice. And somebody goes, oh no, here you can have a body now. You can show us your emotion with your body as well. So it's really exciting, and it's a really unique performance art as well. It's very much like theater, but you have no set, you have no costume, you have props, but they might not resemble anything like the actual item it's supposed to be. So it's a kid's playground, and it's really, really interesting working in motion capture. If anybody ever gets the chance to go and just do a motion capture course or go and watch some live motion capture, it's really, really cool stuff.
Well, that's awesome, Jay. Have you thought of trying to get into Star Wars? I know they use that quite a bit now with the motion capture.
It's tempting because, of course, a lot of it is done at Pinewood Studios, which is only about an hour and a half from my house. So I might just have to camp out there with business cards until someone goes, God, will you get that man in out of the rain and give him a motion capture suit or something?
Hey, man, that would be fantastic. If that happens, I definitely want to know it.
It's the never-ending actor's hustle. That's all it is.
Absolutely, man. Well, Jay, thanks so much for sharing that with the motion capture information, man. That's definitely interesting. It's a field that I haven't really known about, but I've definitely been interested in knowing more about it. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know you were involved with Game of Thrones, which is a huge entity that people are in love with. In fact, my wife and I absolutely can't get enough of the show. And you do ADR work, which is the audio dialogue replacement for that show. And what type of work for them have you done? What kind of replacement work for them?
So that really varies. ADR is a really interesting thing. The vast majority of the stuff that we did on Game of Thrones was it's all the battle cries and it's the deaths and it's the it's the men on fire. It's all that kind of stuff, which, for anyone who doesn't kind of know how it works, if you watch an episode of Game of Thrones and there's I'm trying to think of one of the. Are you fully up to date? Because I don't want to accidentally give a spoiler.
Yeah, I am. Like when the Boltons hung the men upside down and they were burnt and filleted. And...
So I think this should be pretty safe because this is season 5 stuff. For example, in a scene where you have a massive battle, so in season 5, I don't know if you remember, there's the White Walkers attacking this fort in the snow, and they're trying to evacuate everybody off on the boats and get them out to the ships. So you might have, there's a bit in there where there's thousands of White Walkers piling over the cliff and they fall down into the fort.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That's actually, all the noise there is actually generated by 10 people. That's 10 guys in a studio in London, and we loop round and round and round and round and round doing different screams and shouts and death cries that all gets kind of built up and up and up to make that sound. So that's the bulk of what the ADR work was. And then you have your individual shout outs. So in the battle scenes, for example, I don't know, if Jon Snow slices a White Walker across the neck, they'll go, right, Jay, we need a death here for this White Walker that Jon Snow attacks. So you have the big cinema screen in front of you and you watch the scene, and then when Jon Snow sticks a sword through your neck, you make all the requisite sounds and you die horribly. It's really challenging vocally, especially when they, as we did in season 5, right, these guys getting set on fire by the dragon, you're up. And as you can imagine, when you get set on fire, you're going to scream pretty loudly, and you can't fake it. So you have to scream as if you've been set on fire. So it's quite challenging, and it involves a lot of improvisation as well, especially if you're doing background chatter in a battle camp. And it's right, we just want guys walking past talking about the battle or packing up to move. So you got to improv all these lines. And then the last thing you'll do is sometimes, if the extras are a bit unfortunate, we'll actually dub the extras. So a few times we've gone to do an episode and they've gone, right, yeah, the director really likes the sound of this guy, and this guy, but we need a new voice for this guy, and we'll actually dub some of the the smaller extras parts to a voice that they think just suits it better, perhaps. So that's kind of the three main parts. You got what's called Walla, which is all just the background battle sounds, and then you got the improv stuff. You got the shout outs for specific hits or deaths, and then you've got any actual dubbing and lip syncing of any parts they want to replace.
Wow, man, that's amazing that you got to be a part of that. How did that role come about for you?
I trained over here with an ADR academy called Louis Elman Academy, who are just a fantastic bunch. And Louis Elman over here is a very well-known ADR director. So after I trained with him, and I guess he must have liked what he saw. So I got a call, a couple of months later, going, hey Jay, can you come down and do Game of Thrones? I was like, and at that point, actually, I had never watched Game of Thrones. So this was season 5, and I was supposed to be doing Valerian. So I needed to kind of know what that sounded like. So I binge watched 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, trying to pick up this language. And then when I got there on the day, they were like, no, it's fine. You're going to be English. And I was like, oh, fine. Okay. I've got brilliant Valerian ready to go, but that's fine.
Well, you have it for some other day when they need Valerian.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad you were able to get to be a part of that, because that show for me is huge. And to know that I've been watching this show and that you're involved with it, it just makes it that much more, hit home for me. So it's awesome that you're involved with that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, Jay, not only have you been a part of TV shows, commercials, and some animations, but you've also done some video game voiceover work for a game called The Dwarves, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It's out. I think it's out this month, actually. Now, yes. It's so long between when I do the voices when the games come out. I lose track all the time. But I think that's actually out this month now.
Okay, fantastic. Could you tell us just a little bit about the game and kind of what you did in the role that you played, or the roles you played?
Yes, I think so. No, yeah, none of it's under NDA. It's fine. That's the biggest problem working in games. It's like, can I? Can't I? Yeah. So the dwarves. I think technically it's literally just called Dwarves, and I'm gonna look it up real quick because it's actually a game adaptation of a really well-known book series.
Okay. And
they've now it was kickstarted by I'm trying to think what the company name evades me for now, but it went on Kickstarter and it earned raised an amazing sum of money on Kickstarter, and it's now become this game. It's sort of what would you call it, like a top-down role-playing game, a bit like Diablo, if anyone kind of knows Diablo out there. It's that kind of style of game.
Yeah.
And I play 3 characters in it. I play 2 characters which have fantastic names of Jolasin and Famosulnudin. It was brilliant. Luckily, I never had to say my name in the recording, so I didn't have to trip over them too much. And then I play another character called Thief Brother. And yeah, I can't give away too much of the story, but they're all pretty interesting characters. In fact, I think the first 2 are pretty much baddies. And then the third one, the Thief Brother, is kind of just a guy trying to make his way in the world. It's very sort of Lord of the Rings-esque in its story, in terms of you've got this band of dwarves that are sort of fighting against this evil force that's overtaking the land. And the Thief Brother is a guy who runs a gang of thieves who are just sort of trying to make their way in the world as it falls apart, really. And he comes across these dwarf characters and gets embroiled with all of them as well. And the other 2 guys are just bad people doing bad things who may or may not get their comeuppance depending on what the player does.
Oh, cool. So it's kind of depending on what choice you make in the game, kind of changes the roles up a little bit potentially.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I like when games give you that option to kind of make your own story. So that would definitely be a fascinating game to play. What kind of advice would you give to someone who might be looking to pursue voiceover? Someone who's in a position where you were, where you're like just ready for a change, or it's something they've grown up wanting to do. What kind of advice would you give to them about voiceover?
Oh, wow. Right. That's the next half an hour taken up, because I can talk about this forever. It's really difficult because there are so many bits of advice that you need to know, which bizarrely is one of the reasons I started coaching was because at the end of kind of 2 years, there was all this stuff I knew that I wish I'd known at the beginning. I think the first piece of advice I always have for anybody is forget the silly voices, forget the fun in the booth, forget that it's a creative enterprise. If you want to go into voiceover now in 2016, unless you are extremely lucky, and I mean that you just happen to get cast in something that blows you out of the water, day one, and you become a household name, or if you've got pipes like Barry White or James Earl Jones, where you're just blessed with an amazing sound, is you are starting a business if you go into voiceover now. You have to build it like a business, you have to market it like a business, and you have to think of it very much like a business. And being self-employed, even in something that you love, the second bit of advice is understand it's really, really, really hard work. I'm very, very fortunate because I've got very, very far in what is in industry terms, a pretty short amount of time. I mean, like now, to be able to be full-time in 2 years and, have all the agents that I've got under my belt that I need and all that kind of stuff is unusual to do it in 2 years. I mean, 5 years is what you kind of have to think of as a minimum to get to a position in voiceover. So it's an investment of time. And I worked myself to the bone for 2 years. I was doing like 16-hour days every day, just hustling. And it is a constant hustle. It's a constant looking for work, finding contacts, going to networking events, working on your marketing. It's something that is all consuming. So if you want to get into voiceover, you can do it. That's the overriding thing, is you can do it, but you need to know that it's going to be really, really hard work. It's going to take a lot of effort. And unfortunately, as kind of time goes on, it's getting harder and harder because there are more and more people that want to do voiceover now. So yeah, be prepared for the hard work, treat it like a business. And if you know those two things straight off the bat, you're a step ahead of everyone else. But get some performance experience. That's the other thing as well. I'm very fortunate because although I had a 12-year career in IT, I can sing, I've done theater, I've done musical theater, I've done plays. I've got performance experience, which is what you need, because it's voice acting, which is always the thing that kind of, it's this thing is voice actor has become a term, but it's just acting. It just so happens to be, your voice. I know there's not a single voice actor I know that couldn't be just at home on TV or on the stage, because ultimately they are just good actors. So get performance experience, get improv experience, get to a position where you're very comfortable with performing in front of people, because it's really daunting, especially as a voiceover, because you're very isolated. Especially in an audition, you go into a booth on your own. There's just you and the microphone, and there could be. I was in an audition a couple of weeks back for an animation series, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4. There was 5 people the other side of the glass, and you feel like you're an animal at the zoo. They're all just looking at you, going, "Right, perform, monkey." So it's really daunting, and you've got to be confident in your own abilities, and it's a bit like stepping out onto a stage. When you go into the booth to do an audition, it's very exposing. So get some performance experience, get up on the stage, because that will all put you in good stead. But that's probably enough. That's probably 3 tidbits that should help. And get a coach. If you want to get ahead, get a coach, because that will fast track you to knowledge you need about the industry or performance style, et cetera, quicker than trying to figure it out on your own.
Thanks so much, Jay, for sharing that knowledge with us, because coming from somebody who has that firsthand experience, and like you said, somebody who has accelerated so quickly in the industry, the knowledge that you've attained is definitely far exceeded the time you've probably been in the industry. So
yeah, it's been a wild ride. It is getting late. It's been a wild ride. And I think that's the other important thing as well is there's a lot of people out there with fantastic voice experience, but there's danger in listening. How can I put this the right way? You need to listen to people who know what it takes to start in the industry now. People that have been in the industry for 30 years will have great knowledge about the way business works and performance, but they started their business in an age where Twitter didn't exist, where websites didn't exist, or if they've come up through radio, for example. So it's really important that you surround yourself with either other voice actors who are going through the same stuff, or people who kind of understand what it takes to start, in the voiceover business in the recent past, with social media and websites and all this competition now and the pay-to-play websites and all that kind of stuff. So try and keep get hold of knowledge that's as fresh and as relevant as possible as well.
Oh, that's a good word. Something I really hadn't thought about myself. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, because there is a lot of change in the industry, but also technologically that does play a part in the industry now because of us keeping so connected with one another on social media and stuff. So I appreciate you bringing that to light because that's not something I had even thought about. So
yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, the amount of work I get through Twitter alone is just it's insane. And then you've got the technological challenges of having a home studio. There are so many ways now for production companies to connect to your studio. So there's a whole technology angle you need to get your head around to have a home studio and be able to run that efficiently as well. So the biggest tip I can give above everything is just surround yourself with other voice actors and other voice talent, especially ones who are kind of going on a similar journey, because the voiceover community, bar none, is the friendliest community I've ever known. Everyone will help you out. Everyone will give you a hand. I mean, I got sent an audition today through one of my best mates in the States. His agent sent him something, and he thought, do you know what? I think Jay would be good for this. He calls me up on Skype. We have a nice chat, and he sends over the audition. Even though it may conflict with his audition for the same job, he's like, no, man, just stick it in. So it's such a friendly community that's really going to be your greatest ally, because not only do they help you figure out where you need to go, they will be a shoulder to cry on when you have to go through the inevitable rejection that comes with being an actor.
Well, that's most excellent to hear that there is such a unity and almost a family atmosphere among all the voice actors. So thank you for sharing that with us as well. Well, Jay, do you have any up-and-coming projects that you can speak about? Something that doesn't have a non-disclosure agreement on it?
That's a really tricky one. Oh, God. I'm trying to think. There is only one I know that I can speak of.
Okay.
It's like thinking about like Voldemort and Sauron. It's like the things that shall not be named. There's one that I have that has literally, it's just come out. So it's kind of coming up because it's only just come out. But that's a video game called The Turing Test, which is phenomenal. If anybody likes Portal or the Talos Principle or those kind of games, go and check out The Turing Test because it's phenomenal. I only knew my part of the story, and I didn't realize one of my friends had also been cast in this game until after we'd recorded. So we both knew each other's parts of the story, but we didn't know the story end to end. And we stupidly decided to stream us playing the whole game for 7 hours, and we finished at 3 a.m. But we did it from start to finish, and we kind of learned the story on the way, and it's mind-bendingly brilliant. It's really good. So go and check out The Turing Test. I play Captain Daniel McLean and his brother, Chris McLean, in the game, so that's me. I got another game coming up called, this is all semi under wraps. It's publicly known, but there's not much information out there in terms of release date. But it's a game called Spirit City, which will actually be myself, a little unknown actor who I don't think anyone's ever heard of, called Troy Baker. He's some guy from the States. I don't really know. So it's me and him and another guy who's relatively unknown, called Lance Reddick. He's in it as well. So that's coming up with the three of us, and another lovely lady called Alex Wilton Regan, who was in Mass Effect and Dragon Age. She's phenomenal as well. She's a British actress. So that's coming up. I think we're due to start on it this year. Who knows? These things always kind of come up and go away again and come up and go away again. So it is happening. It's called Spirit City. It's a VR game, so for virtual reality, which is really interesting because that's going to be performance capture as well. Some degree of motion capture. We're not quite sure yet how it's going to work. It could be a bit of a melting pot of different types of media. So that's really exciting. I can't talk about that and that. So that's probably it, I think, at the moment.
Well, I totally understand. So, Jay, do you have a way people can reach out to you? Website, social media? How do people reach out to you, brother, whether they want to talk to you or hire you?
I am everywhere. You cannot escape the Jay Britton. There's a tip to any voice actor wannabe. Be everywhere. So yes, you can get me on my website, which is pretty much where my demos are and all that kind of fun stuff, which is just voiceofjbritton.com. But most often you'll find me on Twitter. I'm a big Twitter guy, so I am at VoiceJBritton on Twitter. Facebook, I have a Facebook page. Just search for Voice of Jay Britton. YouTube, I have a YouTube channel where you can actually watch the 7-hour stream of the Turing Test if you're that interested. And unsurprisingly, my YouTube channel is Voice of Jay Britton. Where else? Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, website, an email, just Jay, at voiceofjbritain.com. It may take me a while to reply just because that's the way my life goes. But if anyone wants to pick my brains, ask a bit of advice, send me a demo to listen to, and I promise I will get back to every single one of you, even if it takes me a couple of weeks to get back to you, I will, because I love helping new people getting into the industry, and any excuse to talk to someone, really, because I spend most of the day talking to myself.
Well, Jay, I have one final question for you today, brother. The question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Oh, wow. God, I really should have thought of that in advance. The legacy I want to leave behind. I think kind of there's two I want to leave, and I think the first is simply to my son, to leave behind an example of you can follow your dreams and make them happen, regardless of what the world tells you should be doing or what anybody tells you on the way to that dream that you can't do it or it's not possible. So I want to leave a legacy of you can do whatever you want to do and you can be whatever you want to be. In terms of the voiceover world, I really want to leave behind the legacy of just brightening people's lives. I know, I've got a couple of plans afoot. Like I really want to get a scholarship set up to help people get started in the voiceover industry, get them out to events, get them coaching funded, get them home studios set up so they can get going. So I want to kind of set up a scholarship. And there's something utterly beautiful, and I got to experience that moment. I should think everyone listening will know a guy called Rob Paulson, who I'm happy to say was a coach of mine and is now a friend of mine. And he talks about that beauty of being able to make people's eyes light up when you turn on a famous voice. And I kind of want to leave behind a legacy of just giving back to the community that either is voiceover or loves voiceover as much as I possibly can, because I'm very aware that I have been given a gift and I'm very lucky to do what I do. So I want to get out to as many Comic-Cons and expos and things as I can, and just meet any fans and take pictures with everyone and do voices for whoever wants me to do voices. I don't care, because I just want to give back as much as I can. So I want to leave behind a legacy of helping people get into the voiceover industry, and championing the voiceover industry, because it's just such a brilliant industry and a brilliant community. And of course, I wouldn't mind leaving behind a legacy of good work as well. That'd be nice.
Most definitely, Jay. I think both of those legacies for your son and for your fans now and in the future, that's fantastic. In the way that you want to help sponsor and bring up the next generation, that's fantastic. I know a lot of people will probably look back on this 50 years from now and say, wow, it all happened.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely, brother. Well, Jay, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
That's right. The pleasure was all mine. It's been great fun.
Would you just give us a little closeout, and we'll wrap up this show today?
Well, I'd like to say thank you. You've been listening to Jay Britton on Who Did That Voice. And in my normal tones, I would just like to say to everybody listening out there, whatever you want to be, you already are. All you need to do is do. Thanks for listening.
Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Friday for our next special guest, Debbie Derryberry, who is the voice of Jimmy Neutron. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.